We're not going to get very far with this, but you should probably read chapter 10. And this is what the chapter is about, basically. Proximate and ultimate causes of behavior. So, of course, proximate level changes, we talked about this before, they're the how things happen. What are the mechanisms behind it? Let's say immediate physiological changes and physical changes happening sometimes separately or simultaneously. And then, of course, the causes of why this male blue-cheeked beater produces vocalizations when communicating with other bees. Okay, so why is it doing this? I don't know why. I wonder what they sound like. Well, I'll have to look it up. Okay. So, evolutionary processes actually determine which genes survive over time. This is evolution by natural selection. Or which, same thing with the epigenome. The genes that animals possess influence the proximate development of, let's say, neural mechanisms that make behavior possible. So, if you have certain alleles that, in fact, lead to behavior that increases evolutionary fitness, then it'll be passed along. And these are the mechanisms that actually are causing things to happen. Okay, now, let me look at this. There's these voles. You know, guys know what voles are? They're these little rodents. I'll tell you right now. Whole bunch of different species of rodents. They kind of go through cycles of population growth and crashing and things like that. But there are some species that are polygynous. What's polygynous mean? The male has many partners. Okay. Some polygynous animals are harems, so they stop other males from having sex with other females. Others, they don't. This is one of them is the montane vole, and they're polygynous. The prairie vole, on the other hand, actually makes very, very strong pair bonds with the female and helps the female raise the offspring. In other words, this prairie vole falls in love with the female, just wants to be with her all the time. Now, why would he like that? Well, it might be something to do with let's say, immune function traits. So, a more diverse, yeah.
I was actually thinking of posting something kind of related to that with zebra finches.
Yeah.
They were saying that, I don't know if it's an economist article where when they chose their mate, they would take better care of their offspring and they would survive longer, better chances of survival. Whereas where they didn't, where they chose somebody they didn't want in the first place, and it was random.
Yeah. In fact, it's a kind of new study. I didn't see it in the economics magazine. Is that where you saw it? Okay. But they were looking. Zebra finches are a model organism, so they do all sorts of stuff on behavior with them, and So they were wondering about how they actually chose mates and why they chose, because there's the idea that perhaps the female likes a male that's brighter than the other males. That sort of sexual selective traits. Well, it didn't seem like that was actually happening. So what they did was they let a whole bunch of them pair up, and then they had identical lineage of zebra finches, and they actually made pairs of finches. And they looked at fitness, how many they used, the number of offspring that actually survived to adulthood. And it seems like, it turns out the ones that they paired up randomly had much lower fitness. But it also looked like when the birds were choosing each other, they're like choosing each other kind of like, well, it appears this way. We don't know what's going on in their head. But, the chemistry is just right. One versus another. And so when we think of sexually selected traits, we think of, like the stickleback with bright red belly, or the bowerbird that makes much more extravagant bower than another, things like that. But it seems like there's kind of, whether it's an emotional connection or, underneath it all, there's some physiology going on, but there's more a matter of choice. Now, it might be activity patterns or something like that.
Yeah, they were like, maybe it's the compatibility, like in
Yeah.
behavior, like how people's personalities are compatible or not.
Right.
And they're like, there's no like, they only paired as long as they got in a couple relationship, then they were going to test them whether they can do well with somebody else's choice, and they didn't. So it's like, what is desirable for one of the zebra finches wasn't desirable for the other. So they're
Okay, this is where we left off. We're talking about, at this point, two different related rodents, prairie voles and montane voles. And they have different life history and mating systems. One of the mating systems for the montane vole is polygynous. That means they mate with a lot of different females. And prairie voles, on the other hand, actually create very strong pair bonds and then raise the pups together. It's kind of like humans. So in the previous evolutionary history leading to the prairie voles, let's see, where were they? It was the other system, polygynous. Okay? So, in other words, for prairie voles, there was selection at that point for that lineage to be monogamous. Whose money is this? Now, why would a lineage or a species be monogamous versus polygynous? Any ideas? Okay. What's usually the limiting factor in raising young?
Predation.
What?
Is it predation? Predation.
Okay, that's one thing. Okay. Anything else?
Resources.
Yeah, food. So if it actually takes two parents to get enough food for the female to make enough milk, then you would probably expect monogamous systems. If that's not the case, where a female alone can provide enough food and milk for her offspring, then there's no need for the male. Okay, so we've got two different ecological systems, essentially, selecting for different kinds of mating systems. Okay, the spread of adaptations by natural selection. Okay, so the ancestor or of the prairie vole, probably there was, whether it's I think it's probably a genetic difference. Well, I know there's a lot of genetic differences between the two. And then the genes have survived in the present prairie voles. In other words, they find themselves in systems where there's usually not enough food. And then we have developmental system of the young voles, of course. So these are some internal mechanisms. Developmental systems, those are part of the proximate mechanisms, right? So previously, this is the evolutionary lineage. In other words, the phylogeny. Different adaptations for the prairie vole lineage. And then we have how do those differences develop, developmental systems in young voles, and then there's a whole bunch of physiological differences in terms of how the brains develop, and there's a couple different hormones. One is called vasopressin, and the other one's called oxytocin. That's not OxyContin, that's different. Okay? OxyContin is an opioid. I don't know what would happen. Oxytocin is, they first discovered it in terms of mothers bonding to their young, but they've also found, in fact, that it also is involved in bonding, pair bonding in adults. Apparently, they've done some experiments. I guess if you someone sprays some oxytocin up a male's nose, he's more likely to share things, and he's more likely to want to bond versus not having it. In other words, anybody ever seen Midsummer Night's Dream? No Shakespeare. Oh, you have. Okay. So males have always been looking for things that would make females want to fall in love with them. So this is the same kind of thing. And I'm not sure what happens with oxytocin with females. It might work the same way. I'm not sure. So eventually they're going to be selling this stuff, just so you guys know. So if you ever find yourself all of a sudden agreeing with something that the opposite sex or whoever you're attracted to, and normally they're not like that, I would think that maybe you've dosed. That's going to be that. Okay. And then behavior, of course, that's also proximate to mechanism. And of course, then we're back around contribution of genes to the next generation. There might been some variants that are mutated that are in the population now that are beneficial. And then evolution by natural selection, and around it goes. Okay, so here we are, the proximate levels again. Genetic and developmental mechanisms, these are proximate, or genetic developmental mechanisms, and then the actual mechanisms that initiate and produce the actual behavior. And then the ultimate, of course, evolutionary history and adaptive value. Okay. So these are the two vole species. These are kind of they're a model organism in that, but they're an unusual model organism because they're not like lab rats and mice and things like that, C. elegans, fruit flies, that have been developed many different lineages in the lab. These are actually based on wild animals. It turns out that rats and mice are not monogamous. Okay, so you really can't look at a model organism to test hypotheses about monogamy and how it is actually expressed. But they've actually found out with these guys that once they found out the underlying system, in terms of hormones, they could actually get mice and lab rats to either to show actual pair bonding behavior. So Ocrogaster males, in at least some populations, these are prairie voles, and they're these are them, prairie voles, and then this is the polygynous males, and those are the montane voles. Okay. So here's an actual phylogeny. Let's see. Okay. So the diagram suggests that the tendency towards monogamy may have originated early in the history of the genus. Oh, let's see. They don't really show the... Okay, so this is... I was wrong. No, that's polygynous. Polygynous prairie. Okay. Yeah, so... oops. So originally, this is polygynous. And then the ancestor for the sagebrush vole and the prairie vole, there was some genetic changes. And so these two lineages. And then right here is a different, let's say, it's a variable system. That's California vole. And we're back to polygynous. And then we're back to these two, meadow voles and montane voles. Okay, so there's been a lot of back and forth here, which you can understand. I mean, there's probably what there is what we would call facultative monogamy. So with the prairie voles, not all prairie voles are monogamous. It's probably dependent on the kind of environment that they're in. In an environment where there's probably a lot of food, they may actually be polygynous because it could increase the male's fitness. This is a cross-section of a prairie vole. So it says here, what we actually see is right in this area. We have an area that's got a high density of receptors for vasopressin. And then there's other areas where we don't actually see that. So this is an experiment they did. We have, let's see. Oh yeah, okay. So we have mating, separation, female, male, female, stranger. The male is neutral. The female is a partner. And in terms of the time spent in the chamber with the female, prairie voles are much more likely to partner, spend time with their partner, compared to the neutral stranger. And then in terms of, yeah, okay. And then, it's the opposite with the montane voles, who are polygynous. They're more likely to spend time with the neutral. Of course, less time with a stranger, but also, more importantly, with the partner. So once they have sex, they kind of tend to get out of there. You know, they say, I know you want me to spend the night, but no, I have to go. Right? That's the general rule. Okay. Okay, and here we go again. So, in terms of the monogamous prairie vole, the ones that received added copies of vasopressin 1 gene in the ventral pallidum spent significantly more time with a familiar female versus an unfamiliar one when given a choice over 3 hours. And then in these other areas of the brain, they received the same sort of thing, but it had no effect. Now, there's also differences in vasopressin between montane voles and males and prairie vole males. And then I think oxytocin, for the most part, works more on the female side of things, unless you give a huge dose of oxytocin. So I guess probably for the women, you probably want vasopressin carry around. And then for males, you want oxytocin, okay? And then, of course, there's always, you might want to get rid of them, but you know how to do that, right? Everybody does. Okay. Okay, what do I want? Oh, yeah. Okay, and let's see, where's the other one? Where am I? Try it again. Oh, that's right. That's right. There we go. These are varied thrushes, and there's actually what's going on here. There are the primary frequencies, and then there's what are called harmonics. So these birds can actually produce the whole bunch of different frequencies that actually make up the song, and not just one frequency. Oh, that's right. So those are the harmonics, right? Okay, so vocal communication, there's a whole bunch of stuff, as you can imagine, going on in birds with vocal communication. There's the neuroanatomy. You would think that because birds, a lot of them have to learn song, they have probably similar complexity in their brain compared to us in terms of language learning. The males are the primary ones that sing. So there's gender and sex role differences in the ability to sing. The male, we'll see a lot of birds actually, they learn from their fathers. But the female birds in the nest also learn because they have to recognize, oh, this is who I want to mate with, right? Now, there are some birds where the male and the female both sing. There's these wrens, white something, we'll look at them, but they're in the tropics, and they sing back and forth to each other. So it's a very intricate sort of thing. You can imagine how important it is in pair bonding, defense, a whole bunch of different things. So they actually sing back and forth. But normally it's the male who sings the female or sings to another male. Because you have to think about where's the song intended for. And it can be intended for both in terms of like territoriality or to the female that they want to actually attract. Then we'll look at some vocal learning and development, and then different types of vocalizations. A lot of them have what are called call notes or warning notes that both male and female make. And then, of course, there's some ultimate causes. One would be territorial, one might be mate attraction. It could be predation. So a predator comes in and they usually it's a warning call. And they found recently, it's really interesting, that some birds that, let's see, first C, they make a warning call, and then that warning travels throughout the whole community in the forest, including squirrels, and everybody suddenly lights up and realizes, oh, now, which is kind of strange. I mean, why is the bird doing this? Does it make it more conspicuous in terms of sound if one bird gives the call, another doesn't? But it turns out a lot of these sounds they're very similar and they kind of fade into the background. So you actually can't determine exactly where they're coming from. Okay. Oh. There we go. So there's 9 major nuclei of the brain involved in song production. You don't have to memorize these. Neural pathways carry signals from the HVC. Let's see, what's the HVC? I forget. Oh yeah. Oh, the HVC is the lateral portion of the magnocellular nucleus. The RA, forget it. We'll go back to. You can look that over. It's in the notes section of it. And then other pathways connect all these areas. There's an area called Area X that's involved in song learning rather than song production. Much like human learning, because we've got, not only do we have to learn it, we have to learn how to produce it, and then that production signal actually has to go to the different structures that actually make the sound. Now, birds have something. I'll go back to it. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, so here we are. Now, not all birds have this, but songbirds, which are the biggest clade, robins, warblers, finches, they all have what's called a syrinx. And it's with the syrinx that they actually produce different sounds. There's some species that actually produce sound differently, like hummingbirds use their wingtips that actually make a certain sound. But for the most part, the birds that actually can sing, and there's essentially three groups. There's songbirds, or what we call perching birds. There's hummingbirds, and then there's parrots. Okay. Now, the syrinx has a bunch of different structures. It's got these tympanic membranes. Tympanum sounds like drums and things like that. And then it's got also these different rings and cartilage walls, and they can actually change the way sound comes out. And some birds can actually sing a duet with themselves from one side of the syrinx to the other, in case they get lonely, I guess. Okay. So here's our zebra finch. They're monomorphic. The males and the females look similar. But in most songbirds, males have a markedly larger control region for singing, as you expect. Male song regions contain more and larger neurons than do the females. So this is the RA, which is part of in the female, and that's part of the learning apparatus, not the production apparatus. And then here's some different volumes of different areas. Males are white, females are gray. The RT, those are regions that are not involved in song. The RA is involved in learning. And the HVC is production. I'm not sure. Area X looks like it's male and involved in learning. And I'm not sure, obviously females have to learn too. So they do, but they're not exactly like the males. They don't have to practice the song that they learn. Probably won't work. Oh. Okay, so you can look at that online too. It's X-ray of what's going on with the cardinal. They don't have the prettiest song. It's pretty monotonous actually, but it is loud. Let's see, the hermit thrush. Um, where is, I have it? I don't. Well, we'll use, oh, I know what I can do. Okay. Now, anybody know about sex determinism in birds? As far as, no, you don't? Okay. They're a little different than us. Instead of having an X and a Y, they have a Z and a W. Except that the female is the heterogametic sex. That means she has a Z and a W, versus in mammals, in most mammals, it's the X and the Y, that's the male. And that's, it's not part of this class, but that's why males, if there's any kinds of mutations on the sex chromosomes, there's no rescue that you would get with a somatic cell, right? Because they have different chromosomes. So if there's an X mutation on the female X, and the male has and then it has a Y, well, the Y won't rescue it. So that's kind of what's going on. But anyway, the absence of the W chromosome results in the production of estrogen by the embryonic male gonad. And this hormone appears to be involved in differentiation and growth of the song region. Seems weird. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. So it's the absence of the W chromosome. So you can see in terms of the neurons in the HVC that are susceptible to that hormone, the males produce a lot more, have a bigger volume. Okay. Estrogen was implanted in newly hatched males and females. There was no effect on males, but the females actually developed larger song areas in the brain. So we have a normal male, volume of song area, HVC. Female treated with estrogen, halfway between, and the normal female. So it's actually, the estrogen actually created females that started acting more like males, and they could learn to sing. Okay, this is all kind of a lot here. I think what I want you to do is pay more attention to it yourselves, read it over. Let's see. So elevated testosterone for males, estrogen treated with females treated with estrogen. They don't sing as adults. Females not treated with estrogen when young do not sing as adults. Females treated with and then there appears to be a critical period around the time of hatching in which the brain is sensitive to these hormonal influences. That's a major thing to concentrate on. And that gets to the critical period that we're going to be talking about. So some birds are age-limited learners. There's a critical period. They have to learn it within a certain period of time, after which they really can't ever sing proper song. The nuclei in the brain, they change in volume and density of the neurons seasonally. If they're not during the breeding season, they get much smaller. And then one of the things that causes this change in the brain is a photoperiod. So we have passerines. These are the perching birds. And then there are some non-passerines that actually can learn, like I mentioned, parrots and hummingbirds. But even in learned song, there's a strong gene by environment interaction. Songs of all other birds, if you can call them that, are innate. Even some of the passerines are innate. Specifically, the cowbird, which is a nest parasite. So the female lays her eggs in another bird's nest. And as the chicks grow up, they never hear their father, so it's an innate sense. Okay. They're basic, in terms of, we'll worry about, just forget about the innate side of things at this point. There's, in terms of birds that learn song, there are age-limited or critical period song learners. And then there's also open-ended song learners. So birds with a fixed repertoire, they sing the same song all the time, are usually age-limited or critical period learning. In other words, it's restricted to that period of time during the first weeks or months of life. Now, open-ended birds can also learn throughout their lives. And birds with very large repertoires like mockingbirds, thrashers, I think that's meant lyrebirds, which we'll take a look at in Australia. And then critical periods actually vary greatly from one species to another and within species. So, the white-crowned sparrow, by the way, this has been kind of a model organism in terms of learning, song learning, and investigating that about the critical period. Actually, some groups do have a fixed repertoire, but others that migrate, it turns out white-crowned sparrows have a lot of different song dialects. Kind of like we have dialects here, or different languages, right? So languages like we have, or different dialects for birds, kind of signal you're in-group or out-group. So the white-crowned sparrows that actually migrate to different areas, they're able to learn the new dialect, even as adults. The other song sparrows do not. So normally, in this critical period, young birds have to hear tutors as they're growing up. And they're usually adult males. Now, if a bird is deafened after it has learned and sings adult song, in other words, after it started to learn the song, it can still do it. Unfortunately, if a bird develops an isolation or is deafened before or during song acquisition, then it never learns to sing properly. It will sometimes sing, a lot of times some of these birds have templates for species-specific song, and it'll sing some version of that, but that's about it. And then here it talks about different phases of learning, and we'll get into that more specifically. Okay. Let's see. Actually, this is a white crown, so forget about that. Okay. But we can see, this is a sonogram. This is how researchers actually investigate song learning. And it gives frequency, and you can also look at amplitude and things like that. So zebrafinch is the same sort of thing as a white crown. There's a father, there's a son actually learning the song, and then there's a son that's been deafened either before or during the acquisition phase, and they sing an abnormal song. Oh, here we go. Okay. Let's just make sure. Okay. Okay, so let's see what happens here.
Track 23, White-crowned sparrow, normal song. Abnormal song from lab-reared isolated white-crowned sparrow.
Okay, I think there's both of them, but let me see here.
Track 42, White-crowned sparrow songs, dialect from Oregon.
Oh, never mind. We'll get rid of that. Okay, so unless the white-crowned male actually listens to the father, or if they listen to a playback, that works as well too. Then they learn how to sing proper song. And as you can see, the song itself is much more complex than the simple little white-crowned sparrow song. Okay. So there's different phases in terms of learning song. There's the sensory acquisition phase. In other words, the song is learned, but they have to hear it. There's a critical period. That means the time when they're most susceptible or able to learn song is actually constrained, it's innate. But the song learning itself is, of course, learned. the birds match songs in the neighborhood to its own innate template. So a lot of birds actually have a template, species specific. And then the bird actually kind of refines the template, and then it stores it until the next breeding season. And then it retrieves it, and that's when it starts practicing. They produce something called their own songs, sub-songs. It's kind of like babies babble. Same sort of thing. And then matching their songs to the template that's in their head. And then the feedback of vocalizations to the template. So that's when you start singing, comparing, singing, comparing, singing, comparing. Now, besides this, the template with these birds is actually changed. So they have an innate template that they're born with, but then they hear these other songs from their tutors. That gets incorporated into the template. And then in retrieval and production, that's when they actually start singing the sub-songs to the new template, and the feedback for plastic song to the new template, and listening to themselves, and they refine it and refine it and refine it, and then it gets to this final adult song, and it's called the crystallized song. And after that, it's supposedly perfected, and it doesn't change after that. Okay. So here's the sensory acquisition phase up at the top, sensory motor phase down here. There's physiological factors and auditory experience. So up at the sensory acquisition phase, there's this innate template that's species specific to some species, not all. There's a sensitive period, and they also have to hear a song model, whether it's actually an adult male or a playback. And this is where they actually acquire the auditory template. This is now a new kind of innate song. It's been modified from hearing. Later on, we have the sensory motor phase. In terms of, there's hormones involved in terms of, because remember there's a photoperiod change, certain nuclei in the brain get bigger in the males, and they start producing testosterone, the gonads get bigger as well, and they start vocalizing with what's called sub-song, which is baby babble. And then it gets feedback from its own song. So what it does is song matches the template that it's already heard around and around and around until finally at the end you have this crystallized song. Okay. Now, it turns out some birds are susceptible to learning the wrong song. It doesn't usually happen, because they usually are born into the nests of their mother, and they're not transferred by some creepy biologist into the nest of some other songbird. But we see this on the bottom. We see a white-crowned song sparrow. Let's see here. Okay, and we have a neural template that's open. This is the age of the bird over a period of time. Oh, I've got to meet you. Okay, and then you can actually see what it's learning. Now, the song sparrow has a much different song. And then over the matching phase, there's plastic song and full song. Let's see what happens here. I actually think with song sparrow, it actually can learn the song sparrow song, but it doesn't show that here. But anyway, here's what the no, that's the wrong one. That's the song sparrow. Okay, I'll have to fix that. But anyway, it turns out the white-crowned sparrows can actually, if they're placed in a song sparrow's nest, actually start singing song sparrow. But they still have an innate template. So there's something kind of weird going on there. But like I mentioned, it really doesn't, that's an unusual situation because you're not going to have a bird born in a different species nest. So it's something that is never going to occur. Now, the first people to look at song development was a guy named Thorpe, and I think it was in England or Germany. He raised chaffinches in isolation where they could not hear the song of their parents, and he found that they could produce only a very rough song. And then birds have the innate template. He also showed that there was a sensitive period in song learning. We've already talked about that. So after being kept in isolation, birds were played the songs of chaffinch and of other species of finches. He found that birds could learn songs for the first 13 months of life, but not after that. And then naive birds would selectively sing chaffinch songs rather than songs of other species. Hence the innate template.
The loud, cheerful song of the chaffinch is one of the first real signs that spring is on the way and can be heard from trees and tall shrubs in town and country. Chaffinches have different dialects in different parts of the country. My local ones in the English Midlands end their songs with a flourish that sounds a bit like ginger beer.
Okay. So the same stuff at the same, or a little bit later, was Baptista and Petronovich with white-crowned sparrows. Baptiste, he was from Monaco, and he was an amazing fellow. He's dead now, unfortunately, but he could actually sing all these different dialects from white-crowned sparrows, whistle them. Incredible. I obviously had an ear for it, like learning the music and stuff, and he was able to produce it as well. And I remember going out with him a couple of times, because he used to love to go around and record bird songs. So he came up to visit Humboldt State University when I was there, and we went out for, the morning song period just before dawn, when everything was singing, and did that. But he was hilarious too. He was a great guy, and unfortunately died at a very young age, like 50 or 55. But anyway, he showed for white crowns that there's a sensitive period. Now it says, however, after 50 days of learning could still take place in 70% of the subjects if a live bird was used, in other words, as the tutor, instead of a recording. Okay, so normally they have to hear between 10 and 50 days, but white crowns, if they actually hear a live bird, they can continue to learn. Now, the idea of social stimulation is important. So in other words, live birds are different than just recordings of birds. So a social environment can have a really strong effect on the critical period. And why white-crowned sparrows exposed to live tutors extend their critical period beyond 50 days. Okay. White crowns also learn dialects as well. In other words, they have to learn beyond. But by this time, they've already got crystallized song. But they can modify that depending on where. So with zebra finches, this is ecological, right? We're talking about behavioral ecology here. What's the advantage of a sensitive period where things are not going to change, and there is going to be an environment where they need to change? So zebra finches, there's a premium on age of first breeding. In other words, they want to, as soon as they're mature enough, they have to sing the right song, and breeding starts there. So in harsh desert environments, the sensitive phase actually goes on for a longer period of time. Probably because they don't have enough resources to actually develop properly in a harsh desert environment. Perhaps the seeds aren't there. Okay. Okay. Now, a lot of birds actually continue to learn song. So a lot of special finches and indigo buntings, there's a premium placed on being able to learn songs from new neighbors. So it aids in male-male competition. They learn songs throughout life. In other words, they actually, not just dialects that they're learning, but they're actually modifying their own song, because it appears that females like a more varied repertoire of song than just a single crystallized song. So this is another thing where they actually have to, the sound environment actually plays a big role in continuing to learn. Okay. You can listen to the rest of it. I think we're done.